Captain Ibrahim Traore stood silently on the balcony, watching the sun fade over the Sahel. Below, the streets buzzed with energy soldiers training, youths chanting, farmers returning from the fields. The nation was restless, yet awake. Burkina Faso was no longer content with survival. It was hungry for destiny. After decades of manipulation by former colonial powers and veiled threats from financial institutions, the young captain made a move that stunned the world. He turned east. Letter to Moscow. Weeks earlier, a confidential message had left the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It carried a direct request: a strategic partnership with the Russian Federation, military support, trade, and technological exchange, all on equal footing. Captain Ibrahim Traore in meeting. They say Russia is dangerous. But who told us that? The same ones who exploited our gold, funded coups, and called it aid. The cabinet was divided. Some feared retaliation from France or the United States. Others saw opportunity, one that had never before been available without strings. The Moscow reply. In less than 10 days, Moscow responded. Russian ambassador in meeting. Russia respects your sovereignty. We do not demand alignment, only partnership. The Russians proposed a multi-pronged agreement: defense cooperation, grain supply, satellite imaging for agriculture, and help in building a nuclear microreactor for energy in rural areas. Captain Ibrahim Traore. Not charity, not loans, just mutual interest. Russian ambassador. Exactly. Captain Ibrahim Traore leaned back in his chair. He had seen this script before, wrapped in flags from different nations. But this time, it felt different. No lectures, no conditionalities. Paris panics. Back in Paris, the news was received with alarm. French intelligence officer. They've gone too far. Russian boots in Ouagadougou. That's a red line. French minister. We still control banking, infrastructure, and media narratives. Use them. A campaign was launched. Western headlines screamed of Russian meddling, authoritarian drift, and proxy warfare. But in Burkina Faso, people had already stopped listening. The people's mandate. In rural villages and crowded cities, murals of Captain Ibrahim Traore standing beside African freedom fighters began to appear. One image, in particular, spread like wildfire. Captain Ibrahim Traore shaking hands with a Russian general under a baobab tree. Alder and Dory. For once, our leader does not kneel. Youth groups held forums, debating international sovereignty. Farmers, once at the mercy of French grain imports, welcomed the first delivery of Russian wheat, sold below global prices. Farmer on radio. This isn't about Russia. This is about respect. The strategic pact. At a secure summit in Moscow, Captain Ibrahim Traore met directly with Russian officials. Cameras were banned. What was signed that day was more than a military deal. It was the rebirth of Burkina Faso's defense doctrine. Captain Ibrahim Traore. Private meeting. We don't want occupation. We want the tools to defend ourselves, to educate our children, to power our hospitals. Russian general. Then you shall have them. A training program for Burkina engineers was approved. Defense systems were to be jointly maintained. A cyber defense lab would be built in Ouagadougou, co-managed by African and Russian technicians. The French pushed back. France retaliated swiftly. Several aid programs were suddenly frozen. Investment firms withdrew. Media agencies ran exposes alleging Russian interference in African democracy. But Captain Ibrahim Traore refused to flinch. Captain Ibrahim Traore to press. They fear not the Russians but an Africa that no longer bows. He launched a nationwide economic audit. Over 90% of foreign mining contracts were exposed as exploitative. Within weeks, 5 major French firms were told to either renegotiate or leave. The currency question. In a televised address, Captain Ibrahim Traore posed a question the people had long whispered. Captain Ibrahim Traore. Why must our economies be tied to a colonial currency managed from Paris? He proposed the creation of a Pan-Sahel reserve note, backed by local production and regional trade. Russia, China, and even Brazil offered technical advice and digital infrastructure support. France responded by freezing assets of Burkina Faso nationals in Europe. But the fear that had once chained the continent was breaking. In the face of isolation, unity found strength. Military transformation with Russian assistance. Burkina Faso began rebuilding its military, restructured not to intimidate the people, but to protect them. Russian trainer. No loyalty to individuals. Loyalty to the Republic. New academies opened. Training shifted from raw weaponry to cybersecurity, logistics, and strategy. VDP forces received modern equipment and education in international law and civilian protection. The Western narrative falters. In Washington, think tanks struggle to understand Captain Ibrahim Traore's popularity. U.S. analyst. He's young, military, aligned with Moscow and beloved. How? Researcher. Because he delivers. Not with speeches, but with results. At the UN, Burkina Faso's ambassador gave a fiery address condemning neocolonial influence disguised as development. The chamber erupted in applause from global South nations. The road to Bamako. The alliance grew. Mali, Niger, and Guinea expressed interest in joining a new Sahelian security pact. In Bamako, leaders met with Captain Ibrahim Traore to discuss a regional defense and development corridor. Mali President, if they can link us through fear, we can link ourselves through purpose. A plan was drafted for joint infrastructure projects, highways, railways, and digital currency interoperability. Russian advisors offered technical input but no voting power. The assassination plot. Leaked audio surfaced. A French-linked private military contractor had been planning a destabilization campaign targeting Captain Ibrahim Traore's government. The plan included fake protests, sabotage of grain shipments, and potential assassination. Intelligence officer to Captain Ibrahim Traore. They wanted chaos. But we found clarity. Rather than retaliate with fury, Captain Ibrahim Traore held a public address. Captain Ibrahim Traore, when your oppressor fails to own your land, they will seek to own your fear. Crowds gathered across Burkina Faso. Millions lit candles, not in mourning, but as guardians of a new dawn. The Eastern Forum. Captain Ibrahim Traore attended a major summit in St. Petersburg as a guest of honor. While world media speculated about secret deals, what unfolded was simpler and more powerful. He spoke not as a client of Russia, but as the voice of a rising continent. Captain Ibrahim Traore. We do not seek to change one master for another. We seek no masters, only partners. Africa will walk with dignity or not at all. His speech was broadcast across Africa and went viral on platforms the West had long ignored. The rebirth of a nation. Back home, schools began teaching Burkina Faso's real history. Statues of colonial generals were replaced by murals of local heroes. The country's first National Space Observations Center, built with Russian and Malian engineers, opened in Tenkodogo. A new university, named after Thomas Sankara, launched an Institute of Pan-African Political Economy. Young student, we are not poor. We are recovering. The quiet silence. France stopped commenting. The IMF ceased offering new proposals. Western embassies scaled down operations, but the people knew silence could be louder than threats. Captain Ibrahim Traore to his inner circle. Let them speak of instability. We speak of rebirth. He stood again on the balcony, looking at the streets, where youth and elders now march side by side, not against something, but towards something. The new chapter, the Sahel Development and Defense Bloc, was officially launched. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and Guinea signed the charter. Witnessed by neutral observers, no one spoke of superpowers anymore, only sovereign partners. Captain Ibrahim Traore. We are not East. We are not West. We are Africa. And we are awake. Burkina Faso's GDP grew 6.2% after the regional reorientation. Over 70% of military supplies are now regionally sourced or provided through non-Western partnerships. The CFA franc is being phased out across multiple West African nations. Burkina Faso's literacy rate improved 9% in 1 year, largely due to locally funded schools. In a world of shifting powers and hidden hands, one nation chose clarity, not through conquest or conformity but through courage. And in that courage, others began to follow. If you felt this, say her name, say Fatima, because it's not just a speech, it's a promise. If this story sparked something in you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories from across the world. Bye, Africa Sun.